When you Google Canadian death panels, Google and its AI will tell you there's no Canadian death panels. That's just nonsense. However, this article's from 2013.
Here we go.
Canada has death panels, and that's a good thing. What's a death panel? Let's discuss the idea of a death panel for a minute.
All right, hang on. So this is the way they're doing it.
Mhm.
All right. They haven't got to the point where they're admitting this is who we're going to pick to die. They're admitting who they're not going to treat. They're like, okay, like for instance, I've talked to probably half a dozen people who watch this show from Canada who have asked me for the anti-cancer, diet, treatment, whatever we have. And because once you get to a certain stage of cancer in Canada, they won't treat you. So they just say, "Oh yeah, you're stage 4. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You're gonna die."
Yep.
That is an indirect death panel. But once it gets socially accepted, they're going to flip their script and go, "Oh yeah, everyone over 72 years of age, report to your extermination facility because you're done." Yeah, no, I don't fucking think so.
So Pop and I are old enough to remember an old movie called Logan's Run, which was a cheesy, campy movie, but it had titties, and because we were like 8 or 10 years old when it came out.
But it also had dating apps.
Well, Yahoo. Yes, it did. It had dating apps in your house.
Yeah,
where you literally swiped left or right, and she could walk through the screen
into your house.
Yeah.
Now that's just
like
Uber. You're just like, yeah,
right.
come over. And
it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's just more of a
anyway. Logan's Run did it first, but also everybody had a gemstone in their palm, and when that gemstone started flashing and then stopped emanating light at all, stopped shining, you had to report to what was called carousel, where you were blown up in a ritual.
Well, they sold it as a renewal.
Yes, it's a renewal, and nobody was allowed to live past 30.
Yes.
And there was no such thing as marriage. You just get somebody pregnant, and then they did scientific things, and the baby was raised in an incubator. And it was supposed to be this perfect utopian society. Well, these insane Bolsheviks, meaningful pause, they really want this for the real world. They want to keep the population down to 500 million. They want to keep people permanently medicated in some fashion. And how many of you out there know more than 3 people who are not on some sort of medication?
Well, yeah.
Think about it.
I knew people in the service because you really couldn't be on any crazy meds back in the day. You can now.
Well, civilian world. This is purely civilian world. Yeah, in the military, you couldn't.
Yeah. No, I really don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my buddy Pete, I think he's on like a cholesterol pill, but
I can only think of a tiny handful of people.
Yeah.
That are not on something. One of the things with the Logan's Run thing, and this is something my brain just made the connection on, you're only allowed to live to 30 years old. Okay. Now, everybody here knows I'm that freaking history geek. I'm the kid who sits around and actually reads Virgil. Yeah. There has for a long time been in academia this trope about how nobody in the Middle Ages really lived past 35 years old. That was like the average lifespan was around 35. Now, line that up with Logan's Run and only living to about 30 years old, and this whole thing that we know they're trying to do with the Georgia Guidestones. When were those put there even?
70s, 80s? The money was paid somewhere between 75 and 78.
There you go. That lines up with the whole Logan's Run thing. And that's when academia started saying that people only live to about 35 years old in medieval times anyway. Now, if you go back and bother to read the Greeks, one of the chief generals in Caesar's time died at the age of like 92 when he fell off of his favorite horse while out on a ride.
Well, it happens. But I think what they're talking about there is so many people died in childhood that it skewed the numbers way to the left. But once you made it past the age of like 15 or 16,
Mhm.
your chances of making it into your 50s or 60s were pretty good.
I don't think it's true. I think it's bad academics. I think it is a deliberate exaggeration. There's a whole bunch, like the Dark Ages, for example. I know we're going down a rabbit hole here, but there's a point to it. The Dark Ages, for example, that's the time period of the Byzantine Empire. There was nothing dark there. That was all well documented and was a period of huge development for crafts and architecture and music and all of that stuff.
Yep.
So we all know that our academic system is skewed, and it's all pushing us toward this idea that there should be less of us anyway. And now you've got the idea of death panels here in Canada. And mind you, this is October 20th, 21st, 2013. Okay, last week, Canada's Supreme Court ruled that doctors could not unilaterally ignore a Toronto family's decision to keep their near-dead husband and father on life support. In the same breath, however, the court also confirmed that under the laws of Ontario, Canada's most populous province, I think everybody in Canada lives there, a group of government-appointed educators could yet overrule the family's choice. That tribunal, not the family's doctors, has the ultimate power to pull the plug. In other words, Canada has death panels.
Correct.
Now, when you give disaffected, disconnected bureaucrats authority over something like this,
oh my God, you're asking for
it becomes a bureaucracy of death. It literally becomes a bureaucracy of death.
it.
They pick and choose. Yep.
When has the bureaucracy not in the end become a bureaucracy of death? I'm just asking for a friend.
That's fine. You make a very valid point. I'm talking about this is specifically a bureaucracy of death. That's what this bureaucracy does, is who decides who lives and dies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we used to go to war, and bureaucracies used to pick who would get drafted and who wouldn't. And back in the day, getting drafted was pretty much a death sentence.
Yes. Yes, it was. And that is definitely a form of a death panel of sorts. Now, you had a chance. It was like playing freaking rollerball or Running Man.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a very good chance. And you were going to come back messed up.
Yeah, listen, you never step into the eye of oblivion and come back clean.
No.
I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.